everyone. My name is Sarah Yoon, as Unique introduced me. I work at the National Democratic Institute, or NDI, out of the Korea office. And the Korea office mostly manages our North Korea program. But in addition to that, we also work on a little bit of what we're calling democratic solidarity programs. So trying to get South Korea and Japan and other democratic nations in Asia to participate in democracy assistance and solidarity, but also we work on Cambodia program out of the Korea office as well. Yeah, I consider that a huge perk of my job is to be able to develop that bird's eye view. And, going back to the issue of kind of siloing and being narrow-minded, which happens in all activist communities because they're so busy in their work. Our job is we're forced to kind of step back and observe and assess the landscape. So I consider myself very fortunate to be able to do that for my job. One thing was already mentioned is this kind of emergence of a new generation of younger defectors who are very open-minded, but very determined, right? So I think it's a question of how do we nurture these leaders to take up while finding a solidarity and lessons learned from their predecessors, from the first generation, who are still, frankly, very active, right? So I think it's about the sustainability of the movement with the emergence of these younger defectors. I think the other thing we're seeing on the access to information side is that compared to a number of years ago when I jumped into this field where the approach was send all and every and any information as you can, right? Send anything and everything. Now the approach is, well, let's be a little bit more targeted, right? North Korean people have been able to see a lot of outside content as a result of the work of many of the groups here. So why don't we build on that and be more targeted in our content creation and tailor our content to the North Korean audiences? And if you dig a little deeper into that, then how do we segment the North Korean population? Like, who do we see as potential change makers inside North Korea? Are they women in the markets? Are they young Jangmadang generation youth? Are they, other elites? Who are these people? And what are their needs? And what are they thinking? And what kind of information do they want/need? So being very kind of targeted in the content development and access to information approaches. So I think that's something that we've seen emerge over the past few years. The other is advocacy and accountability. And so again, I think a number of years ago if what we have focused on was let's raise awareness about the dire human rights situation in North Korea. I think a lot of that groundwork has been done, although it still requires the continuation of awareness building. But in addition to awareness building, what are accountability efforts, right? Judicial and non-judicial of the North Korean regime. So, and how do we leverage those advocacy data and evidence and documentation into more of an accountability effort? So again, like building on the foundation that the previous generation has laid down. Yeah, I think those are the major. And then what the other thing that was already mentioned was kind of this effort to find solidarity and network building moments with Asian activists and particularly closed country activists in the region. And then lastly, I would say being a little bit more, I guess, like thematic in discussing human rights issues, right? So I think a lot of effort has been done on certain like women's rights issues, forced labor issues, and then linking those to global developments, right, to get the attention of global stakeholders. So I think overall, the community is being a lot more strategic in our approach, but then there are other challenges that come with it, like the the reduction of defectors, and therefore we have little visibility into the updates that are, the changes that are taking place in North Korea and whatnot. But I think the North Korean human rights community is compensating for those challenges by being strategic and kind of broadening their approaches. This is where we need other experts and newer stakeholders to contribute to the movement. Is for example, I talked a lot about content development, but on the distribution side of things, because of the border closure and lack of, basically essentially very little access into the country, then there's been this question of how do we get information in, aside from radio, which has always been done over many, many years. So how do we get information in cross-border? Or otherwise. And in order to think about these questions, the North Korean human rights community cannot do it alone. So then you need other experts from other closed countries to share best practices of what they have done, for example. And another example is we need technicians and engineers and internet freedom folks, to civic tech people, to be able to have these discussions with us. What are alternative ways of sending information in? Can we even develop new tools, new dissemination tools? And that's a very long-term process, but we need to have those conversations, and those conversations are taking place slowly but surely within the community. But that's all to say that we need those technical experts and functional experts to contribute to the movement. I think in addition to engineers, we need a lot of researchers, I think, that can contribute to the movement as well. So, I mean, I know Unique is a researcher, like an analyst herself, right? But other people, maybe perhaps outside of the core boundaries of the North Korean human rights people, who have the academic and the research expertise to be able to analyze the data, documentation or evidence or data that comes out of the country, and to be able to write convincing reports, right? I think that is a big opportunity, or something that is not really necessarily being met, because there's the research community, right? There's the researchers and the academics, and then there are the activists. And very few people who are sort of crossing those lines. And so I think I assume most of you are students, and if you are interested in doing more Korea policy related research even, I think there are opportunities to contribute to the North Korean human rights community. Yeah, I mean, I think challenges, the other side of the challenges is opportunities, right? So that's to say that just because I lay out challenges doesn't mean that it stops there, but then it's an opportunity for us to think about how do we flip that. I mean, one, I think one that has to be mentioned is the continued politicization of the North Korean human rights issue here domestically in South Korea. And that will probably not get better anytime soon, given the current political context. Very complicated political situation here. And as many of you already probably know, North Korean human rights traditionally has been sort of an agenda of the right rather than the left. So depending on which administration, it's sort of the support for it and prioritization of it gets ping-ponged. And we will likely see that continued. So then it's a question of how do we address that? And I think one way, as we talked about already, is to sort of re-globalize the North Korean human rights movement, get more people, outsiders, international lists involved in the movement, but also find linkages with other trending and moving human rights frameworks across the world. I think another way is for participation of newer, younger people, younger generation, and maybe to partner with the emerging younger group of activists, defector activists here. I think that will help with the depoliticization a little bit. One thing that has been tried here and there without much success is the partnership with the domestic human rights community. So not North Korean human rights, but thematic human rights communities here in Korea, like women's rights movement or LGBT or, many others. At the end of the day, we have similar values, right? But because of politicization, we've been in different camps. So maybe finding sort of opportunities and wedges to find solidarity and partnership with them. And as was talked about already, I think solidarity with global or regional human rights activists is not only going to contribute to the siloing challenges, but also the politicization here. I mean, the other thing that always gets brought up is the lack of funding and lack of organizational capacity as a result. I mean, a lot of these organizations are running on very lean and limited budgets, which has implications obviously for programmatic work, but also for the team and individuals who work for these teams. And so a big challenge has been, how do we get young people to not only come, but stay, right? What are the incentives for them to stay, aside from the fact that you're moved by these issues? So know that the larger community is aware of this challenge. And we've frankly, in fact, NDI and another organization called Voice, a Canada-based organization called Voice, we recently did a survey and an assessment of the previous surveys of the resilience gaps of the North Korean human rights community. And a lot of what was brought up was more support for practitioners and activists to be able to sustain their work. So that's another challenge, but something that we're aware of and hopefully we'll make some incremental improvements on. Other things were mentioned already, but yeah, I think these challenges cannot be addressed by one organization or two organizations. So it's a community-wide effort in many ways. And again, as being part of NDI, I feel fortunate and blessed to be able to see the bigger landscape and to be able to find these gaps, to be able to address them in small and big ways. And hopefully you all can take a little bit of part in it in small and medium and big ways.